Hey friends, it's Blake with Birthing Babies. I am here launching a brand new podcast, Birthing Babies for Birth Workers. A lot of times it's exciting when we have a passion, but we're trying to get all of the pieces together to get that passion off the ground and let it become a business. And so I am here to help doula you through your birth business. I am here to coach you, to give you the support, to give you the real world advice, answer the questions you might have, the ones you didn't know you had, and the ones that you're still trying to figure out. Hey friends, it's Blake with Birthing Babies for Educators. Thank you so much for joining us today. We are going to talk about pricing your classes or your services. So all of these concepts that we're talking about would work well when trying to determine how much to charge for your childbirth classes. But for birth workers who may not be ready to jump into teaching childbirth classes, this is going to do a nice little deep dive on how to charge for your services. So maybe you're teaching prenatal yoga, maybe you're doing postpartum belly binding, perhaps it's doula work, whatever it is, we want to help you find the best pricing option for your budget. So the very first question that you need to ask yourself when you're trying to figure out how much to charge for your classes is, how much do you want to earn annually? And then you take that and break it down a little bit further and say, okay, that is my annual income for this service or this class. Now, what does that look like for a monthly goal? So some months are going to be busier, right? December's always a hard time. People are very busy with family commitments. And so I always say people forget that they're pregnant during the month of December. So we're going to take that into consideration and know that not every month are we going to hit our monthly goals, but what is our monthly goal, right? So when we take our annual goal and we divide that by 12, what is our monthly goal? I encourage you to take it a little bit further, right? So also looking at what is the hourly rate that you feel is appropriate for you. What is your rate that makes you say, okay, this is worth me getting up and going and teaching this class or offering this service? So we figure out our hourly rate, and that helps us to determine what is our length of our class and how frequently are we teaching that class. So when we're pricing a class, you're going to look at all of these variables. So what do you need to make and what is an appropriate hourly rate for teaching this class? We're going to make the assumption, right? So I would say 5 to 6 couples in a childbirth class would be a really good sized class, especially early on. Hopefully we'll get to the point where you have 10, 12, if that is something that is of interest to you. Some people like the smaller classes, myself included, but I would say 5 to 6 is probably an average size childbirth class. So what do we need to make in order to hit our monthly goals based on 5 to 6 couples? It's highly unlikely that you're going to start teaching classes and automatically get that goal met, right? So it's worthwhile to have alternative form of income until you get there. But looking at, okay, let's say it's 5, right? So we're going to use really easy math right now. So perhaps my annual goal for childbirth classes will be to make $6,000 a year. Now I'm going to have to look at what does that equal monthly? That equals about $500 monthly. And so I'm teaching, in order to hit 5 people, that would be $100 a couple. Now we can take that one step further. So since my monthly goal is 500, if I were going to have an average class size of 5, but I wanted to teach a 6-week class, then that would go over into the next month. So I would need to figure out, okay, instead of being able to teach and look at it monthly and on like having the income monthly, and perhaps you have some breaks built in. So maybe you're doing one class every 2 months. So now I need to charge $200 to reach that $500 a month goal. So the frequency of your classes, the length of your classes, all of those play into meeting your budget needs. And that's going to play a role in pricing your classes. Other things that you're going to want to look at is, what is the cost of doing business, right? So how much are you going to have to be paying for the space that you're using, for childcare, if you have to arrange childcare while you're teaching classes, travel. So what does gas look like? Wear and tear on your vehicle if maybe you're traveling an hour away to teach your classes. What are some of those other hidden expenses? Maybe you're missing dinner time, so you need to grab dinner on the road. And so those need to factor in too. So let's say that the cost of teaching a class is $20 a class. And now we're going back to one class a month. And so instead of saying, okay, I need to start at 100, maybe now I need to start at 120 because the cost of doing business is going to be $20 a class. And now I'm going to hit my budget a little bit better. Other things to really take into consideration is, what does it look like in your market? What other classes are being offered? How many other classes are being offered? What is the price range? There's advantages to being on the higher end within your market and being on the lower end within your market. That really boils down to who is your ideal client avatar and which demographics are you trying to meet within your community? What would your ideal client pay? How much can they afford to pay? How much do they value childbirth education or your services if it's not childbirth education? And so looking at how many days or how many hours your competitors are, and it's not really competition until every person is taking a childbirth class. I don't think we compete with each other. I think we just increase awareness of the necessity when we add more classes to our market. But the other classes in your market, what are they charging? How many hours are they offering classes? What is the size? What's being covered? What are the credentials of the teachers? All of those play a role. So a Lamaze certified childbirth educator credential costs over $1,000, right? I believe it's in the $1,100 to $1,200 range. Now that's not all paid out at once, but there are 3 steps, and each of those steps does require a financial commitment to it. So purchasing the learning guide, attending a childbirth educator seminar, and then applying to sit for the exam and paying the exam/membership fee. Those all cost money, right? So if you are a doula and you have created a class based on your years of experience, that's great. Perhaps they don't need to charge as much to recoup the costs of their certification. So different things are going to be considered in that realm too. So we're looking at a lot of different things when we're trying to figure out how much to price our class. You're going to hit a very different person when you're charging $400 than you will if you're charging $100. I believe the going rate for childbirth educators nationally for a class is going to be in the $150 to $175 range. And so if you are choosing to be less than that or more than that, think about why that is. It could be the number of classes offered, the time commitment, trying to figure out how to spread that over multiple months. All of those are really important. We want to look at the value and we want to look at, is this appropriate for my clientele? So for me, I have very low cost childbirth classes. I find that to be worthwhile for a multitude of reasons. So the first reason I initially decided to charge a lower rate for my childbirth classes, and I'm not really going to talk about what that is, but less than the national average for childbirth classes. I chose to do that because when I did a search of childbirth classes in my area, I found that most people had moderate to high cost classes. And so I decided that I would choose a low cost class, comparable to what the hospitals were charging, right? So giving people an out-of-hospital option for a hospital childbirth class rate. It wasn't too long before I decided that I probably was charging too little and decided to go up on that cost. Not significantly, still far less than the national average, far less than anyone else in the market. But I decided to do that because I wanted to reach people who knew they wanted more than the childbirth class, but maybe couldn't afford to do something beyond the hospitals. So I didn't want them to feel like they had to take a hospital-based childbirth class in order to get a quality education because that was all their budget allowed for. It works for me because I have multiple streams of revenue. So that's another important factor to look in. If I were just trying to make ends meet financially for my house, for my family, on what I bring in as a childbirth educator, it would never work. But I'm also a doula. I also train Lamaze instructors. I'm a prenatal yoga instructor and a yoga instructor. So I have multiple streams of revenue coming in. And so I see childbirth classes as a marketing attempt to recruit people who may have the option to spend more on doula services, or it's not the only reason I do it. Obviously, I do it because I love it. But it's a benefit, and it also allows me to keep my costs low as long as those other areas are showing growth. Looking at the market, I do, however, offer private classes, and my private classes are on the higher end because not everybody needs to take a private class. It's more of a convenience factor. I do have the lower end classes or the lower cost classes available to people should they choose to go ahead and do a higher cost private class. Then again, I'm looking at my hourly rate. So I'm not getting the same as if I have 5 to 6 couples and I need that hourly rate to hit a certain number. So it's significantly more than it would be if it were a in-person childbirth class. I hope I've given you guys some good stuff to look at and think about as you are deciding what is appropriate for you and your business model and determining how to price your services in your childbirth classes. As always, don't forget, my name is Blake Slusser. I'm a Lamaze certified childbirth educator, and I train Lamaze instructors. Learn more about how to price your classes and market to your ideal client avatars by attending one of my trainings. Those can be found at teachlamaze.com. Thanks for listening.